Welcome into the starting 11. Will West, Chris Carroll. Top 11 topics in the world of soccer with an EPL bend every Monday afternoon at 3:05. I am Will West, joined by my partner in fashion crime, Chris Carroll. Chris, how are you, sir?
Thanks, Will. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, doing well. So I will say this, though. No fashion crimes today. We're repping your club team, FC National.
Good to see, mate. Good to see.
Gotta support the brand.
Exactly. I'll pay you later.
Yeah, it sounds great. If you've never watched the show before or new to the channel, here's what we do. Top 11 topics in soccer, a little bit of an English bent to it. It's the top league in the world, so why would we have it been that way? But we're just breaking it down. Hit us up with the comments. Shoot us a message on social media, however you would like to do it. Like and subscribe if you would like more of this English Premier League / soccer content. I'm from the States. Chris is from Wolverhampton in the UK. Okay. Top 11 topics in the world of soccer is how we do it. Here's what we have for number one, Chris. Arsenal. Are they in a downturn right now? They're winless in their last three, and it seems like they're coming back down to earth a little bit, possibly. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that they're having a bit of a wobble at the moment, but I think that's normal during the season. Arsenal haven't fluked the way they've played and all the wins that have established them at the top of the league. So I don't think there's a major concern as long as they don't panic, as long as they stay calm about it. They've got to get through the next week with a couple of tricky fixtures coming up. If they can do that, keep calm. They've lost 2 games all season so far. And I think when you normally win a championship, you lose anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6, somewhere in that region. They've lost a couple right now, so it's not all falling apart. They've had a wobble, but they're still a great team. As long as they can kind of gather themselves, keep the team spirit going, I think they'll be fine and back on track.
Yeah, I think that this is a wobble, but does it take more than a wobble for someone like Man City to get back into this thing, right? I mentioned this before. Pep Guardiola, Manchester City, they are our horror movie villain. They are Michael Myers. Until I see the credits rolling on Rebecca Lowe locally here in the U.S., our post-game show, when I see Arsenal hoist the cup, I will believe that Manchester City is going to hoist that cup just because that's what they are. They're that kind of villain. But there's one, I will say that I think there are problems there. And one of the biggest problems is that they're dealing with injuries. I think that they aren't a team, if you look at their spending versus Chelsea spending versus City spending versus United, Liverpool, they're spending even less than Tottenham right now. And a lot of that's because the players are young. But what that means is they don't have a ton of depth. Now, I know during this transfer window, they went to address that, bringing in Trossard and a few people like that. But I do wonder if they deal with injuries down the stretch. And we've talked about maybe that World Cup break leading to injuries because of a compressed schedule. Also, maybe I have a little bit of a concern with overuse issues and things like that because of a compressed schedule. I'd wonder if they can survive. But right now, their issue is they're not scoring a lot of goals. And if 4 goals, 2 goals, 3 goals, they were beating I think they went 3 out of 4 where they had 2 goals or more. And then in the last 3, they've had 1 goal or none. So Nketiah has not given them enough. They need Jesus to be able to come back. And if he comes back, that's fine. If Smith Rowe comes back, they'll be fine. But they're a team that I think either Trossard is going to have to fit into that front line really, really well and continue what he was doing at Brighton, or I think that Arsenal's going to have Jesus in for Nketiah, because Nketiah just doesn't seem to be the answer at the striker position.
Yeah, I agree. You're right. First of all, Man City they're not going away, so they're going to be there, like you say, right to the end. It all depends on if Arsenal drop off, how quickly they drop away, and I think they can push City all the way. I still think City are going to win it. But I think Arsenal are going to be there. They've got to get over this wobble. The biggest thing, or another big thing, as well as their injuries and the depth of the squad, is their experience. They haven't been in this situation before. Not most of them, anyway. A couple of them have that they got from City. Jesus. When he comes back, that'll be fantastic for them as well. And Nketiah was overperforming, overachieving. Trossard, you're right. He came in and he chipped in with a goal at the weekend. So it's not all doom and gloom for Arsenal. It's a bit of a wobble. Can they stay injury free? Can they keep the noses in front of City? I mean, I think that's the psychological one. I think that's if they can stay ahead or hang on to City's coattails, push them all the way. That City aren't going away. I think Arsenal can hang in there.
Well, so I do wonder about this as well, because we talked about this last week, Chris. You brought up a really good point about the fact that the traditional number 9. If you look, you see Holland's at the top, Kane as far as the top goal scorers in the EPL, Mitrovic is there, and then you see a lot of midfielders. And I just wonder with these guys that is Odegaard going to finish with 16 goals this year? Is Saka going to finish with 15 goals this year? And can you get both? And can they win the Premier League if they don't get both of those things happening? Trossard, you mentioned that, I mean, he was sitting on, I think, 7 or 8 goals when he left Brighton for Arsenal. So is he going to finish with 15? Are you really going to have 3 guys that finish with 15 goals because you don't have a legitimate striker? Do you count on Jesus to be able to stay healthy? Because that's something that he's struggled with throughout the last few years of his career. Or does the light switch come on for Nketiah? My question for them is goals. Where do they come from? And the places that they have been coming from August through December, can we count on those guys to be able to score at the same rate during this last 3 or 4 months of the season? That's a big question that I have.
Yeah, it's a good question too, and I think they have been shared around. They've had to do without Jesus. I'm not sure how far out he is from getting back. The sooner he can come back, the better, obviously. But they've got the quality there to share it around. Odegaard, what a great player he is. He's one of my favorite players in the league right now. He just creates and scores himself, and he's taking the captain's armband, and he's really a driving force in that team. Saka, of course, chipping in as well, and Nketiah. So there's games, Trossard now. There's goals all through the team, all around the team, really, and they could definitely do with a backup number 9, but so could 3/4 of this league, quite frankly.
Yeah, the majority of soccer could deal with the backup number 9 right now, right? So, All right, point number 2, Chris, is this a lost season for Spurs, especially now with Hugo Lloris going down?
No, I don't think it is. If you look at Spurs' overall situation, and we often have a bit of a smile because you're a Spurs fan, and it doesn't matter if whatever they're winning, it's not going great. But but if you look, Spurs top 4. They got a great chance. Champions League qualifying. They're still in the Champions League right now. They're still in the FA Cup, last 16 with an away game against Sheffield United, I believe. So that's a winnable thing. So they're still in. Now, I don't think, if I'm right to assume, that Spurs would have been thinking, let's win the league this year. So I think the next best would be top 4. So they're still on for top 4, even though things don't seem to be going so well for Spurs, and they're not. It's kind of like everything that happens, they still hang in there. They won't go away. So things that crop up, you think, oh, it's one thing on top of another. But really, when you look at the whole picture, I'll tell you what. Again, 3/4 of the Premier League would bite your arm off for the position that Spurs are in right now.
Yeah, and I would say this. I think it is a little bit of a lost year for Spurs right now because this was supposed to be a step forward. You finally spent during the January transfer window, spent a little bit during the summer. Apparently, they're just never, as long as Daniel Levy draws breath on planet Earth, the Spurs are never going to spend the way that Chelsea, Liverpool, United, those teams do. But my concern is this. Watching that, and maybe I'm overreacting to a small sample size with that Leicester City match. They're passing like my niece's ASO team, if you know what ASO is here in the States. The passing's terrible. And that's not an issue of that Lloris isn't there. It's not an issue of injuries to the back end. They just, there's no purpose to what they're doing passing the ball right now. And it doesn't seem as if they're trying to get forward. Against Leicester City, it was clear from the onset that they had far more pace. They're a far faster team, especially in the midfield. And they couldn't take advantage of that because the passing was just awful, just atrocious. And so they have Højbjerg needs to be the guy that makes the pass, that sets up the guy that makes the pass, that sets up Kane or Son. He a little bit more of a holder that can move the ball upfield and can get a nice dribble out of box to box. If he wants to do something, he can do that. I don't want to see him being the main guy going box to box most of the time because I think you're taking guys out of their skill set. Porro comes from Portugal, and he was just terrible. Just absolutely terrible against Leicester City. So for this not to be a lost year for Spurs, they're not nearly as good in goal, and they won't be for the next 7 weeks. So what they're going to have to do is that back end, you can't have an unfocused match from Eric Dyer like you did on Saturday. And I just don't know who there is to play Kane in right now or to play Son in with the ball because Højbjerg is not the guy that needs to be. That's the wrong position for him to be playing that. And I think some of these guys that Conte wanted them to bring in certain players, especially at the wingback position, and those guys haven't played particularly well right now, although it is still a little bit early. You're right, though. It could be worse, right? But what you're having to count on if you're Spurs is light switch comes on for Porro, and also Newcastle continues to fall, because it's hard to believe right now that Spurs are going to be able to go on a run of 3-4 matches in a row that they win.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's this consistency, isn't it? With a lot of teams at the moment, quite honestly, it's not just Spurs, and that's what's bailing a lot. That's what's keeping things interesting at the top at the moment. Certainly, the sort of top 10 or top 8, if you like. Yeah, and to compound the issue, just lost a midfielder. I've forgotten his name. He's done his knee ligaments in, hasn't he? Yeah. So he's out. I mean, so it just goes from bad to worse in the midfield. But you're right, and maybe Kane's got to start dropping deeper again, like he did. That's probably what's going to happen, and play or him and Son interchange like they did really effectively last season a lot, and they were almost unstoppable. So the attacking threat's there. Unlike most teams, the attacking threat's fantastic, but you're just looking to play. Perhaps you just got to go more direct. Get the ball up to Kane, Son, have those two having a field day up top. Cut the midfield out. Play to your strengths. Play what you got. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just eliminate the midfield altogether. I mean, that could be and you're right. I mean, but
not totally, but yeah.
But they probably were at their best last season when Kane was dropping back, right? And became more of a creator than a finisher. So you're right. That probably is the next move for Conte to be able to make. And he brought in wingbacks for a reason, to be able to get forward, and maybe they can make something happen if Kane's the one that's distributing. Point number 3, Chris, are Graham Potter's days numbered at Chelsea? Let me ask you, have you seen enough to know Graham Potter's not the guy at Chelsea?
That he's not. I haven't seen enough either way, really. To be honest, at the moment, the jury's out on Potter. The thing is, we hear that he's got so many players. He's got too many players. He doesn't know his best team. Well, my feeling now is if you can't get a tune out of a squad that talented, pretty quickly there's something wrong with either the coach or the players or the chemistry or everything, and the longer it drags on of him switching players around, the worse it's going to get, because they're going to get fed up and not seeing any results. All of a sudden they're not starting again. And why are we not starting? Why am I not starting? We're not winning. And they're going to lose faith in Potter. He can only use this bedding in period for so long. So I personally think they'll give him till the end of the season, because there's no danger of him going down. There's no danger of them finishing top 4, quite honestly. They've still got a shout in the Champions League. So there's no big harm can happen unless things all start falling apart. If he loses the changing room and just gets poisonous, then they'll make a change before the end of the season. But I think if it just continues the way it is, I think they'll stick with him and give him that time. But yeah, I mean, again, what the rest of the teams, or 3/4 of the teams, would do for that squad and the managers to have that problem, I mean, it's like Crimea River, you've got too many world-class players to deal with. So he needs to do something quickly.
Yeah, I think that I haven't seen enough to say that Graham Potter can't be a successful manager at Chelsea, but I don't know that matters, especially in this day and age, right? Guys get fired pretty quickly. And whether it's Potter's fault or not, it doesn't really matter if he's not the solution to the problem that they have. You have spent $600 million since last summer, and you're losing a lot. And you continue to lose, and you continue to draw teams that have a fourth of your payroll. And that can't happen. So for Potter, he either needs to win. I do think he probably has a month, right? And he needs to win more games than he loses or draws during that month to be able to show that he's turned this around, because ownership's already fallen on the sword one time, right? They spent a ton of money in the summer and said, we brought in the wrong players. Let's bring in new players during the January transfer window. They spent a record amount during the January transfer window. There's only one other person that you can look at, right, that you have to say is the problem. I do think there are guys that have played out of position for Chelsea because of the injuries that they've had. And I think that Potter has not been able to put his best 11 on the field right now, and especially for a consistent amount of time, have his best 11 out there. But at the end of the day, there are managers who can win with this current Chelsea squad. And if Graham Potter's not that manager, he has to be fired, whether I think he's a good manager or not. I know right now he's not getting the job done at Chelsea, and I think sooner rather than later he's going to have to be able to win.
And that's the key, whether he's a good manager or not. He's a good manager. He was a great manager at Brighton. He did a fantastic job there with what he had to work with nothing like the squad he's got now. So has he become a bad manager now because he's got it's just a different environment for him, a different chemistry, and sometimes it just doesn't work. But and it, like you say, it might not be his fault, and maybe he'll learn from it if things do go south and he gets fired. But like I say, he hasn't become a bad manager. Sometimes it just doesn't click, or maybe it will. Maybe they just need they need another. They were unlucky not to win the other day when Souček made that diving save, and no penalty was given, which was a stonewall penalty as far as I was concerned. But they just need some luck to go their way, and maybe all's good.
What do you think when you see things like if you see what's happening with Graham Potter and you see Gerrard go from Rangers to Villa and he can't win, you see Nuno go from Wolves to Spurs and he can't win. What's your read on that when you see these guys who have mid-table clubs or lower levels are able to dominate and then they get to a big club and it just doesn't seem to resonate with star players?
Strange one, isn't it? The only thing I can think of is that it must be a psychological thing. Maybe the manager has. Maybe he doesn't come in confident enough. Maybe he's kind of resigned. He's not in awe, but maybe he knows that he's coming into a bigger club and it shows, and he doesn't realize it's showing. And as soon as you show that weakness in a dressing room, in a locker room with players, if they don't think that manager is confident enough or that he's doubting himself, then they'll be all over it. There was a story of David Moyes he was on a plane coming back from when he was Manchester United coach and things weren't going well, and he got a book out on the plane to read about management, how to become a better manager. Well, the players all saw it and he never recovered from that, and so not the ideal thing to do. So they sniff that weakness, and if they think the guy's not up to it, then the players will let him know and the owners will know eventually.
Point number 4, Chris. Which team in the EPL are people not talking enough about right now?
There's 2 or 3 actually, very similar clubs, and I've gone from the one that's the higher up the league than the rest. Brighton, they're not traditionally a top tier club. If you look back historically, they're not a top tier club. So Brighton have done unbelievably well with what they've had to work with, and this is probably a classic case. Potter's been involved, and the guy who took over from Potter's now heavily involved, and there doesn't seem to have been a change, perhaps in a little more direct and quicker playing style. But you wouldn't have noticed the change in coaches and the way they've performed and the results. They've just kept going and kept building. And Brighton are really smart, and when they recruit, whether it's a manager or a player, they work on the analytics. They have players ready to take over from the players that bought for nothing, built up, sold for a lot of money. They can't rely on shirt sales and attendances, like 60,000 people attendances every week. Their stadium, I think, holds 30,000. So they can't rely on that. They're not going to sell shirts around the world. Brighton, like Manchester United are, for their money, they have to buy and sell properly and well. They can't afford any mistakes. And they've got a huge team working on these analytics and working on buying the right player to fill the gap, because they know they're going to build up these guys, sell them on for a small fortune, and then bring another guy in. And that's the way it's worked. Why the top teams are not doing that either, I don't know. They're just shelling out players that don't fit sometimes, shelling out money for guys that don't fit. Brighton have really got it down. Brentford, similar way. But yeah, and where they are now, 6th, I bet Brighton fans are just pinching themselves, because historically, and I've been around a while, Brighton were never where they are now. They were always lower leagues. Talk about punching above their weight, doing really, really well.
And if you look at Brighton as well, right now, 4 points behind Spurs with 2 matches in hand, sitting at 6. So, and they just sold Trossard during the January window, and it doesn't look like they've missed a beat. So that's a really good one with Brighton. I would also say you could put Brentford in that conversation. You could put Fulham in that conversation. I am going to go with your Wolves, though. I think that people aren't paying attention to the fact, because Wolves were a team that a lot of people thought, okay, Maybe this is the year they finally get relegated. They didn't spend money again, right? And they don't look now, but Wolves have won 3 of their last 4, right? So they won 3 of their 4, and they're scoring. And one thing I love about Wolves, they challenge anything on the outside. Like, you're not going to get, you don't just have, if you want to just screw around and pass to the outside, try to get somebody to make something happen, Wolves are going to be in your grill pressing you. And I love that about this team, and they're figuring out finally how to score goals. So I would say that Wolves seem pretty clear and pretty safe right now as far as relegation is concerned. I'm sure that's the last thing you as a Wolves fan wants to hear me say, is that they're clear in relegation. But 3 weeks ago, we were talking about Wolves possibly being relegated. Now there's no conversation of that whatsoever. And they just won a match. I know it's Southampton, but you had a horrible start and you won with 10 men. How in the world were you able to get that done if you're Wolves? And they just fight like crazy. And I think more people need to pay attention to what Wolves are doing.
Well, I'll never be confident because I'm a Wolves fan. I'll never be optimistic because I'm a Wolves fan. But however, I do have to say that this is another case of what a difference a new manager makes. Again, the first guy, he didn't seem to know. You wonder. They're not bad managers. They've held positions with clubs and done well with other teams in the past, and that's how they get their next job. But he just absolutely stripped Wolves of the characters, of the team spirit, the style of play. He just stripped it of everything. It was amazing. So anyway, they got Lopetegui in now, and it's like a different club, different feel. You could just sense it from the crowd, the players, the way they play on the field. They look like they got more players on the field. They always look like they were playing with one player less. They got 2 wide. When they were attacking, they had 2 wide guys and 1 guy in the middle, and they'd lump it into the box. And of course, it would never hit the guy in the middle. So now there's 3 or 4 players arriving at the same time with the ball and in the penalty area. So of course, lo and behold, it's not rocket science. They got more chance of scoring, and they're sort of eking out some wins. Not comfortable yet, but yeah, it's looking. Like I say, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's looking better, and 2 or 3 more wins, and it could be comfortable mid-table, and I'll take that, quite honestly. So how it was about 2 months ago. Good grief.
Yeah, I love the style they play. You're not going to beat them down the outside. You're going to have to beat them in the middle, and then what you're doing is just telling your midfielders go dribble into traffic, because they're going to try to. It's almost like a trap in college basketball a little bit with what they do on the outside, and so your wings are just taken out of the equation. So you're taking some forwards out because they're just getting pressed so hard. And if you want to dribble through traffic and you can make a play on Wolves, good for you. But if you don't, that is easier said than done, especially in today's game. I think when you have so many midfielders who are looking to score, there aren't as many Christian Eriksen's out there, right? Guys that make the pass that sets up that plays a guy in to then play in your striker or something like that. And so Wolves are a team that's set up where you have to have one of those, another guy that's one of the Williams, one of those players, a guy that makes the pass that sets up the pass. And so there aren't a lot of teams that have that anymore. And Wolves kind of force you to be that kind of team if you're going to be able to beat them. All right, point number 5, team right now, Chris. What teams will be promoted from the championship to the Premier League?
This is always a good one, because the championship, it's like a big bun fight at the end of the season. And you've got, because 3 go up, 2 go up automatically, and that they look nailed on at the moment. And Burnley have got 68 points. They're running away with it. Sheffield United got 61 points. And then the next 4 go into playoffs. And let's just have a look. They've Middlesbrough, Luton, Millwall, Watford, down to about 12. Any of those can make up those next 4 places, the playoffs, basically. So I think it's for sure Burnley. Sheffield United, they're 10 points clear of the 3rd place. I would really like Luton Town, who are sitting 5th at the moment, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4th at the moment. Luton Town, 10 years ago, they were in the 5th tier of English soccer. And it's taken, I think, 9 or 10 years. No one hardly, it's almost impossible to do what they've done. They were in the top flight, financial irregularities and what have you just sent them tumbling. They've crawled their way back up. It would be fantastic for how they were punished. And they weren't a big time Charlie throwing loads of money around. It was just they just got, I don't know the details, but one thing led to another, and it just went from bad to worse for them. So yeah, Luton, I would love them to be the third one, but it's going to be a big scrap. And somebody usually comes in the championship from 10th place, gets in that 6th spot, gets in the playoffs, and often goes up into the Premier League. So yeah, it's like I say, it's a big bun fight at the end. Burnley, Sheffield United, and Luton for the romance of it for me.
Yeah, I'm not going to be fun at all when it comes to this because I think it's going to be Watford at the end of the day. I just think that they did not sell Sarr, right? So, and everyone's been presuming they're going to sell Sarr the last 3 windows, and they haven't done it. So they still have Sarr, they still have Pedro, and at the end of the day, they're just going to score goals. And so I know their form's not great right now, and I know that Middlesbrough's playing so much better than everyone else, it seems like, in that middle of the pack of the championship. And you're right, I really didn't watch a lot of the championship, and then you and our buddy Laurie Dudfield we were having dinner, and you said, oh, watch the championship. You'll absolutely love it. And I love it because you'll just see dudes just howitzer, raindrop, Kobe Bryant, 30 yards out, just cranking them and go 8 yards over the goal. And they don't care. You know what I mean? They don't care. They're going to do it again the next time. It's just dudes having to go out there, and it's a lot of fun. It's physical. So the championship's a lot of fun, but I do think Watford kept world-class players on for a reason, and at some point in time, that's going to pay off for them, and I think that they're going to lead to promotion. So Burnley, Sheffield, Watford, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, unfortunately, is the way that I think this is going to go. But you're right. So new blood would be a lot of fun to be able to get into the Premier League next season. Point number 6, Chris, are EPL managers being given enough time to build winning clubs?
Well, the average time for a Premier League manager is to be at a club is 2 years, or a little over 2 years. And I think this depends on the situation, your perspective as a club. It depends how close you are to the relegation zone, how long are you going to get. Now, because they have been, you've got 3 or 4 clubs, Southampton twice this season, Leeds, Wolves, and Everton. They've already pulled the trigger on the manager that they've had. And so they've had to make a change because they cannot afford to get relegated. And that's why those have all made the changes. Now, Chelsea, like we said earlier on in the show, there's no threat to them for being relegated. There's no threat really of getting top 4 now. So they're going to give Potter more time. And so he hopefully, or maybe I should say, he might get more time. Not a lot more time. And I can understand owners looking at the bank balance and thinking and saying, well, look, I've spent all this money. You better do something with it, if you're Potter. But he gets more time. If you're down at the bottom, then you're on thin ice very quickly, very, very quickly.
How many times did people think Mikel Arteta was going to be fired at Arsenal when we did the radio, when we were doing the show on radio? Repeatedly, that was one of the questions that we would get on social media was, is Arteta going to be fired this week? And they were patient with him. They ended up winning the FA Cup that year, and then look how their patience was rewarded. I'm not saying you continue to go the wrong way down the interstate just to prove the point and just that you can show patience. But I look at a Graham Potter. I would love to see what Graham Potter can do with Chelsea next year. You're right. They're not going to be relegated, and they're probably nothing they can do to make the top 4. Why not ride this out and make sure that the issue is not just the injuries you've dealt with and buying on the wrong players? But if you are a team that's about to get relegated, what do you have to lose, right? Why not pull the trigger and say, okay, didn't work with this guy, let's try with somebody else. Didn't work with this guy, let's try with somebody else, because you're about to lose so much money that what's $5 or $8 million more that you have to throw in the pot to try to make sure that you can make well into 9 figures by staying up at the Premier League. I don't think it's going to work out for them, but because most of them just don't flat have the talent to be able to stay in the Premier League, the teams that are looking to be relegated. Leeds might be the exception there, but they were built to play a certain way, and honestly, they've just never been the same team without Calvin Phillips kind of creating. So they don't have anybody that can create for them, and just have a bunch of guys that can finish quickly if they press high. So I understand why they fire managers with so much money being on the line, but I think there have been a lot of guys over the years that I think if they were given the support by the boards, if they were given support by ownership, and part of this probably is an issue with, and I know I'm digging into Pandora's box a little bit here, foreign ownerships that don't really have a whole lot of investment in the club or investment in the community, and they just want to win now. No, that didn't work. Okay, let's go to the next one. Or we can't make money off of this right now, so I'm not going to spend money. So it's okay if we're bottom of the table because this is just an investment piece for me, as opposed to wanting to win and wanting the club to be successful. So I think when you put all of those things together, there's so much money on the line. You have a lot of people that just won't invest necessarily. I remember you going through Burnley last year when we were doing this on radio, and you said you mentioned that the new ownership there kind of looked at it and said, we're okay going down one time, right? Because to get our books in order, and because we're financially, that's a place where we can rebuild this thing, is by dropping down the championship and getting back up. Someone that's from Burnley, that grew up rooting for Burnley, would do whatever it took that they could possibly afford to make sure that didn't happen. So you have some clubs that are going to go down, but you might as well try a new manager and see with what you have if you can keep your team up when you have the chance. Because it isn't like, outside of teams that are a train wreck, like Spurs have fired a ton of managers because they're a train wreck and they're not going to spend, right? They have Chelsea aspirations, Aston Villa wallet. That's what Spurs have, and that's why they've gone through so many managers. And they're going to go through Conte again too, because they still won't spend. So I just look at it and say, sometimes you're going the wrong way, and I think it's situational, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm taking the long road around to say that. Villa did not make a mistake getting rid of Steven Gerrard, right?
Right. No, absolutely not. No.
So it's situational, even though I know he's a good manager. It just didn't work out there, and there's no reason for them to have shown patience with Steven Gerrard because you knew you were heading the wrong way down the road.
Yeah. And likewise, Man United. But for the last 10 years, they've had 8 managers, if you include the two guys just sitting in, temporary managers, caretakers. 8 managers they've gone through before Ten Hag. Because how United were performing wasn't good enough for Manchester United. So for their situation, it wasn't right. The fans let the owners know, and that's not a great relationship anyway. So they just had to change. And finally, they've come up with the right one. Yeah, some people might think that's crazy, but for Manchester United, that was Man United. They just kept going until they found the right guy. A lot of clubs can't do that. Can't afford to keep paying managers off. But if you're down the bottom, like you say, you've got nothing to lose. It's your last chance. It's your last chance, really, because you can't buy more players. You've just got to turn the mindset around, and hopefully that a positive manager can come in and galvanize the players that you've got, because those players aren't bad players. They're all Premier League players. They're players that have gone through unbelievable sort of sacrifices and work to get to where they're at. So they're not all bad players, but morale goes down. They're human. Morale, confidence dips, and sometimes that new guy you roll the dice. That new guy can just turn things around. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Let me ask you this: is there a guy out there that you look at that's been fired in the last year and a half? Do you think he could have been the next Mikel Arteta had they given him patience?
You think Gerrard. You mentioned Gerrard. Something went wrong there, and he stripped Tyrone Mings of the captaincy, I believe, at Villa, and that didn't go down well, apparently, in the dressing room. So, like you say, he worked wonders at Rangers. Did absolutely fantastic things at Rangers. Steps into a club in the Premier League. He knows the Premier League. He knows what he wants. For years, he was one of the best players in the Premier League. So he knows how a manager should act. He knows what a manager should say. He knows what turns players off, because he's been there on the other side as well. A lot of these managers haven't been players at this level. I don't know. Maybe that's an advantage. I'm not sure. But you'd think it was an advantage that he'd seen both sides of the fence. So I expect Gerrard to come back. Maybe come back a different guy, and I always thought he'd be a quality coach. But hey, it just shows you never know.
Point number 7, Chris. Why have Pep Guardiola's disciples fared so well in English soccer as of late?
They are, aren't they? I mean, his assistant Arteta at Arsenal. We mentioned Burnley a little bit ago. His old captain Vincent Kompany, now manager at Burnley. And what a turnaround at both clubs. It's taken Arteta a little while at Arsenal. They stuck with him, and look what he's doing now. And Kompany hit the ground running with Burnley. And if you talk to people from Burnley and you read about Burnley and how they're playing, it's just transformed. Dyche had them for years, and they were known for playing a more direct, less exciting style of play. Maybe that's what Dyche did, because that's how he could survive with what he got to work with in the Premier League. But now in the Championship, they're ripping up trees, and Kompany has really stamped his style on. He's turned them around. He's turned the fortune. Well, now why? Everybody wants to play pass and move and nice looking soccer and quick on the break and quick snappy passing and pressing and all that. And that's what Pep does. And that's what these two do. So why can't everybody do it? I don't know. But it must be the way Pep must have a way of putting things across to players that they understand, that's simple, that they can just go ahead and do. And maybe it's repetition on the training ground, whatever it is. Maybe it's his drills, but everybody's not doing it. And you think it's not rocket science. There's only so many ways you can pass a move, but he gets his players to do it. His assistant, who's been on the training ground with him for years, he's soaked it in. He's doing it now, and he's a former captain. He's doing it as well. So it's got to be coming. It's not coincidence. It's got to be coming from Pep, and they've got. I mean, if they've been smart and they're copying him. Go ahead, mate. Sorry.
No, I apologize. I think that there's some portion of this that comes down to man management as well, right? Like, how does Pep get world-class players to understand playing your role? And so many world-class players are used to just being better than the guy in front of them, and they're just going to go beat the guy in front of them, create a chance either for one of their teammates or for themselves, and that's what you're doing offensively. Every pass, every movement Pep does is about being able to make sure you score a goal. There's never just a worthless pass or anything like that where we're just kind of feeling out the defense. It doesn't seem like there's that. But we've seen issues at times, especially in the last year or so. We've had people saying maybe some grumblings from Grealish's camp that he's not being used the box to box the way that he was used to being used when he was at Villa. Erling Haaland, you're not just firing the ball deep for me and let me go make plays the way that Erling Haaland's camp kind of wanted him to be able to. He's able to somehow get so many great players with big egos to play within the system that he has. Also, I wonder something that you mentioned last week, Chris, about the fact that there just aren't that many number 9s. And Pep's a guy that there are a lot of guys that have helped Pep's teams win. They don't necessarily. I mean, how many times have we seen them win with their number 9 being hurt, and you still saw City being one of the top scoring teams because they score from all over the field and all over the pitch. So I think that Pep's kind of the guy that began that, and now that you're seeing there aren't enough number 9s to go around, these guys who have come up under Pep, they already know how to get your center midfielder to be able to score, your wing to be able to score, to set up guys for even your holding midfielder to be able to come up and hit a howitzer and score. So he kind of was the guy that set up the system a little bit that we're seeing all of soccer go to now because there just aren't enough strikers that are out there.
Oh, that's right. And he's also stubborn. He's also... And he can carry that off as well. He obviously gets away with it in the dressing room because he's obviously in charge. He deals with these big... They don't seem egotistical, the Manchester City players, quite frankly. They don't come across that way on the field. It looks like they're all bought into what he's doing. They trust him. And some guys can do that and some guys can't. Some guys, if they try and be like my way or the highway, the players will go, well, you'll be going down the highway before us because we're going to stop playing for you. For some reason, he gets them doing what he wants, Pep. He has Silva playing so deep. He was almost a left centre back on Saturday. But because Silva can, he's comfortable wherever he puts him on the field. But they all are. And that comes down to that no number 9. They can all score. How many times City 1-0 and it's Gundogan or Silva, but when he was there, or whoever, So, but Arteta looks like he thought, right, I'm going to go to Arsenal and I cannot be weak. I know how I want it done. I've seen Pep be strong. I'm going to do. He cleared out the deadwood of Arsenal. It was a big job because there was some experience there, Aubameyang and the like, that were causing trouble. And he dug his heels in, and it's happened. Company, he would command respect anyway, I would imagine, because of what he's won, because of his stature, because of his quite an intimidating guy, but absolutely smart as well with what he's won and obviously how he's got them playing. So he's taken that as well from Pep, and it's not a coincidence. No, it's but I think that know-how, you've got to be able to put across the know-how, and then the players have also got to know who's boss. And if Grealish ends up pouting and moving on, well, he'll let him pout and he'll let him move on. We've seen that in the past with Pep as well. That if he's not happy, he don't want to play here, off you go. So he's in charge. And Arteta, I see the same qualities with Arteta. And they were looking to get rid of him, weren't they, Arteta, when he first started? Arsenal weren't happy with him at all. Now look, So yeah, I think he's had a big influence on, but I think it's the way he puts it across, because everybody wants to play that nice way. Now, why can't everybody do it? It's like, again, it's not rocket science.
And I would say this, credit to Arsenal as a Spurs fan. I don't want to credit management at Arsenal for anything ever, but credit them when Aubameyang and Lacazette and those guys were raising a stink. They stuck with their manager, and there aren't a lot of teams, I think, and part of that's their cheapness, I would say, but there are a lot of guys that there are a lot of boards and front offices that would not have been willing to do that. They would have said, no, I'm going to get rid of the manager, not the star player. They were willing to get rid of the star player at Arsenal, and look how it's panned out for them. Point number 8, Chris, who has been the single best player in the EPL this season?
How to think about this one. But then I came back to the obvious for me, and we mentioned him. It's got to be Haaland for me with the performances he's put in. He's supposed to be on a bit of a dry patch. He's having a wobble. He's gone 3 games without scoring, but 3 games ago he scored 3 against Wolves. It was 3 games since his last hat-trick. I mean, for heaven's sake, so he's going to break records more than likely. He scored 25 goals already this season. 25 or 21? 25 goals in the Prem already. 34 is a record. So he's got 10 goals to get in 16 games. Looks like he's going to break that record. But I think he made a massive impact. I think, you could say that our other teams figuring him out, really, but I don't know. I think his soccer education is going to be growing. He's only young still. He's going to learn more than one way, not just route one, ball over the top or ball through a gap and he'll run onto it. And the other day, he laid on a fantastic goal at the far post for Gundogan to come around the back and tap in, so he's contributing. He's contributing now in other ways as well. So I think the impact he's had, there's a lot of other players I like, but absolute impact for me, it's got to be Haaland.
Yeah, I think Haaland would be an easy one to go with, and because he has been the most impactful single player in the EPL this year. If I'm looking all around, let's just be honest. Kevin De Bruyne is the best player in the Premier League, right? I mean, can we all agree on that at all times? Kevin De Bruyne is the best player. Mm-hmm. That man steps onto the pitch. If you're if you're a fan of the opposing team, and it's like seeing Jaws in the water. You know what I mean? You just know something terrible is about to happen, or you fall asleep and you hear the Freddy Krueger song and you're from the little kids singing. That's what De Bruyne is when he walks out there. The man's terrifying. But I will say the single best player this year all around, I think Bukayo Saka has something to say about that. And if you look at it right now, he's 12th in goals on the season. He's 2nd in assists on the season. And how many times have you watched an Arsenal goal come from Bukayo Saka, just smoke the man in front of him, created space, somebody had to leave their man to come over to kind of close him out, and then he was able to make either a shot or the right pass that set up something better for Arsenal. When it seems like they're lost, or it seems like there's some type of gridlock or deadlock, and they're just kind of passing the ball around, looking for an opening, Bukayo Saka just creates the opening with the speed and his dribbling ability. And I don't know that outside of Haaland has been more impactful, but he's been impactful to his entire team, not just putting the goals on there, although Haaland's going to blow away the record. So your answer is probably the correct one. I just wanted to give a shout out to Bukayo Saka for how well he's played this year.
No, he really has. And to be honest, I got another Arsenal player up my sleeve as well. If it wasn't Haaland, Odegaard for me is transformed. The two of those players, there's nothing in it. But Odegaard obviously plays in different part of the field, but he just keeps them ticking. He's such a smart player. He plays people in. He scores. He's always in the area waiting for the ball to be cut back and for the tap in. But yeah, Saka when he gets the ball, is exciting. Something's going to happen. He's going to try and take somebody on. He's playing at the moment like Grealish used to play for when he was at Villa. So Saka, Odegaard, De Bruyne are absolutely fantastic. He plays everybody in. De Bruyne, he's wonderful player. So yeah, it's not any one of those four really, but for the impact really, and the goal scoring, number 9 that's lacking everywhere across the league at the moment. That's why I went with Haaland.
All things being equal, everyone's healthy. I would say the 3 best players in the Premier League right now, De Bruyne is number 1. I think Virgil van Dijk, when healthy, is number 2. And I think Erling Haaland is already at number 3. Am I overreacting there?
No, not at all. I guess, taking those 3 parts of the field, you'd be hard pushed. I fit Van Dijk. Yeah, you'd take him. If you're putting an all-star team together, you'd have those 3 in it, absolutely, for sure. Then you'd have Saka and Odegaard in there as well.
Point number 9, Chris, target man. One player you're targeting to have a big match week this weekend.
I gotta go with Joe Felix of Chelsea, the new guy for Chelsea. He started. He's helping their attack, this misfiring Chelsea attack. He scored a lovely goal, lovely finish, nice delicate finish against West Ham. Chelsea are playing Southampton next weekend, and so surely Chelsea are going to get on track against a Southampton team that are going to be now. They're going to be, if they weren't lacking a confidence before Saturday's game against Wolves, they've got to be now because of the outcome of that game. So yeah, João Felix of Chelsea, the guy that's on loan from Atletico, scored a lovely goal and contributed well during the game. So I've got him scoring again against Southampton.
I'm actually going to go with your guy, Odegaard. If you look at you have Arsenal against Villa, and it's a quick turnaround, but Villa's given up 7 goals their last 2 matches. Only one of those went from a forward. So I'm having to take somebody from a midfield position against Villa. More than likely, they're going to be able to score. Odegaard seems like the guy that's most likely to do that. So I'll say Odegaard for Arsenal against Villa. That's the single player that I would say has the biggest match week this weekend, or the best matchup set up for him. Point number 10, Chris, if found guilty of financial irregularities, what would be a fair punishment for Manchester City?
This is a weird one for me. There's something doesn't quite sit right for me about all this. And I'm not saying that there's a conspiracy against Manchester City, but this has been going on now for how many years? I don't know. It's UEFA, the first inquiry, and this one's the Premier League. But let me see. 5 years ago, these points came to light. 5 years ago, and it's apparently this inquiry is on the basis of that inquiry 5 years ago. Well, why is it taking 5 years now? Where's the checks and balances every season? That's what makes it sound a little bit. And you can understand City going, what's going on here? You know, we've cleared our name once, and now you've waited this long. Now it's 100. There are 100 offences. They've let 100 offences build up, but they must surely, to heavens, they'd have been checking. All the lawyers that have been checking and looking at the rule book, that have all been checking. But on both sides, the Premier League checking on City over the last 5 years, City making sure they were doing the correct thing, had the rule book out for the last 5 years. It just seems weird. So if they're guilty of something, then they should be what's in the handbook for the penalty. I bet there's nothing in the handbook, quite frankly.
Well, it's 6 or 7, I guess, options, but there's not one cut and dried one, right?
Right. Yeah. So who's gonna decide that? They're gonna do rock, paper, scissors for the right one. I mean, it's crazy. So they can't throw them out the league. Surely to heaven, it'll be a points deduction if they've broken the rules. Fair enough. I think. My point is they should have caught it sooner, years ago. And yeah, if they're guilty, fair enough. As long as it's even across the board, then go looking at everybody else as well. That's what I would say. But, I'll tell you, I don't know. It looks like it's making Man City stronger, this.
I do think that, look, times have changed for the EPL, right? Like there was a time, like, and don't get me wrong, what's so great about the EPL is the community aspect of it, and it's clubs, not franchise, right? And all of those things. But there's so much money now that you need to make sure that your stuff's together moving forward. So it's really not about the past, because didn't we find out that Madrid and Barcelona were getting money from the government to prop them up to be able to win their league because it was good for morale in Spain for them to be able to win their league? United, no one looked into some of their issues in the past when a lot of people believed that there were financial irregularities. The game's changed. You're making more money than any other league in the entire world. So I do think you need to be a little bit more on these things. And the punishment, I think, should be this. Whatever it takes to make sure no one else does this in the future. Because they got away from the UEFA thing because there were so many years had passed. There is no clock on the EPL thing. So I do think that the EPL was going to let UEFA handle it, and they would like for them to be the ones that police this. But because so many years had passed, the statute of limitations had passed, UEFA couldn't step in. So the EPL is going to, I think, is somewhat. I think what would be fair is this: 30-point deduction, £200 million. The reason why is it will give other teams pause. You won't just see some foreign group that comes in and buys Brentford and just pumps £600 million into Brentford to make them a superstar to win a championship and make some money. and then pulls the thing back out, and then, hey, we won our championship. Who cares? If you want to make sure there's some level of financial fair play, which I do wonder if financial fair play, to me, if you have the money, you have the money. If your ownership wants to pump it in there, who cares, right? At the end of the day. So I think you probably need to reword financial fair play, either remove the rule, reword the rule, or punish based on the rule. And Manchester City's put themselves in a position to be made an example of. I don't want to see Manchester City out of the league. Everything's better with Manchester City in it. I don't want to see Pep get mad and leave because he's promised that. He said, if they lied to me, they promised me they didn't do this. If they lied to me, I'll leave. I don't want to see that happen. But if you found that they are guilty, what you have to do is it's kind of like putting a loaded gun on a table. You're not trying to shoot anybody, but you're trying to make sure everyone knows that they need to mind their P's and Q's. And so I think that 30-point deduction, they still stay up. I mean, right now it would put them in relegation territory if that punishment came down today, but they would still stay up because Manchester City's going to continue to win. 200 million pounds is going to hurt them, but it's not going to hurt their spending and that sovereign wealth fund that funds everything that City has. But it's enough to scare off the next club from maybe doing something like this. And maybe it's enough to motivate Manchester City to make sure that they don't do anything like that in the future.
Yeah, I think that'll be fair. I mean, like I say, if they are guilty, and they've been cleared of the last one, like you say, it was a time thing, so maybe they did dodge a bullet there. I don't know, but yeah, if they've broken the rules, fair enough. They can't kick them out. I think to kick somebody out of the league, I don't know. There's an argument with the English Football League have to have them, where they have to take them, so they can't kick them out of the league. 30 points would be fair enough. And I think you could throw any amount of cash at a fine at them, and they wouldn't be worried about it too much. So,
and give that to the lower leagues, right? Which is something that they've been struggling anyway. And just make sure the fine doesn't just line somebody's pocket. Send it to the lower leagues and make sure that those teams can be as healthy as possible, because you're always trying to find new ways to be able to do that, right? I also do we need financial fair play in 2023?
I don't think so. I'm not a big fan of it. I think if you've got the money, and maybe this comes. You have to prove that you've got the money to spend, but it's a, open economy. If you've got the money, spend it. If you don't. I mean, it's just like running a business. I don't think this comes into, you start getting into the territory of caps then and salary caps, and no one wants that. So I think if a club's fortunate enough to have the money, spend it. And we've shown and we've seen with Brighton, who have less money, and Brentford and Fulham can compete with those boys. They might not, the big boys will win at the end of the day. But yeah, if you've got it, good luck to you. Spend it. But I don't think they should be restricted. It seems, quite honestly, it seems so difficult to understand for me anyway. Maybe it's me, this financial fair play. I'm not really sure. So they need to clarify it.
Point number 11, Chris, match of the week and your upset pick of the week. Give us your match of the week first, if you will.
Well, my match, the two are linked, actually. The match of the week is Wednesday, Arsenal, Man City, for obvious reasons. Huge one. And I can see the way Man City they're sort of circling the wagons with all this stuff that they're being accused of. It seems like the way Pep's talking, he's putting his arms around his team. He's going, no, I'll be the spokesman of all this, and I've got everybody's back. Good win again the other day. I think Man City are going to beat Arsenal. My upset of the week, because Arsenal lose that one to Man City, which will be the fourth one without a win. It's an outside shot, but I can see, and I've got nothing against Arsenal, everybody. I promise you, I got nothing. But I can see if losing to Man City, I can see them on a downer, and I can see Villa with the upset against Arsenal on Saturday.
Yeah, so I will say my match of the week, I just went with the ones on the weekend. So I went with, I think it's Brighton against Fulham, because, I mean, that's a really nice matchup of two teams who are overachieving. And if I'm just saying what's the most fun to watch, what should be the most even matchup, that might be it. Peek in on Newcastle Liverpool, though, right? There's something there with Newcastle Liverpool, and my upset of the week, I think, will be Liverpool over Newcastle. Liverpool's as big of a underdog against Newcastle as Leicester is against Manchester United right now. That's how big of an underdog the Liverpool is. My goodness, how the mighty have fallen, right?
When was the last time that happened? Good grief.
I know.
Yeah, is that right? Wow. Who'd have thought? Yeah, when
It's
you say upset, that doesn't sound right, does it?
Liverpool against Newcastle. Yeah, that does not seem like something that should be an incredible upset, but Liverpool
No.
on a slide right now. Chris, fantastic job. Thank you, sir.
Cheers, Will. Been great as ever.
Yeah, and
Thank
look,
you.
like, subscribe. We'll be back next Monday at 3:05 with another episode of the Starting 11.